there's two things here, right? With a weak link, you can either train them or you can trade them. That's all you can do. If they're not getting the training or they're not responding to the coaching, that whether they're being stubborn or just not getting it, it's just a bad fit. At some point, you got to trade them. It's never fun, but if you do it right and you take more initiative and more proactive, it will be much easier to handle than if you run from it or just try to avoid it. It'll be a much bigger mess if you don't.
We are so very fortunate to have three great partners for the podcast: Rock Daisy, Output, and Play. Rock Daisy I started using when I was at the University of Washington as an athlete management system. They have been fantastic. Most of these companies, they put their software fees into kind of monthly fees and they don't reinvest. And Rock Daisy didn't just make sense financially, but their customer service was elite. Output I've been using since Fresno State as just an all-around solution for velocity-based training, for measuring jumps, and for measuring range of motion, which I think is an underutilized way to use the piece of equipment. So highly recommend them. And then lastly, those that have followed me for any period of time know that I worked for Play, and I was able to see firsthand just the quality of the products, but more importantly, how they interacted and they supported the coaching community. And so I couldn't recommend Rock Daisy, Output, or Play more. For more information, go to their websites. I'll have them linked down below. But thanks so much to them for bringing these episodes to you for free. Hey guys, welcome to the CEO Strength Coach podcast, where we discuss being a great technician, manager, and entrepreneur in the strength and conditioning space. I'm Ron McKeefery. I'm your host, and I'm joined by a great friend of mine, Donnie Maib. We've done this together for 25 plus years in this business and been great friends throughout. One of the best managers that I've been around. And so I wanted to get him on for this manager episode this week. Donnie's 25 plus years in the business as senior associate athletics director for athletic performance at Texas, working with the Olympic sports there, has done football, played football, done just a little bit about everything. When I introduce Donnie to my friends, I always say that he's the most interesting man in strength and conditioning because he preaches, he does weddings, he's been on Letterman and done the top 10, written books. There's nothing that this guy hasn't done. So, man, super excited to have you on the show.
Coach Mac, it's a pleasure, man. Anytime I can spend time and hang with you, I'm always going to clear the schedule. So thank you for having me on.
Awesome, man. Well, I want to dig it. Each week we're going to kind of lay the framework just to kind of reiterate that framework. So talk a little bit about, one thing that you've learned as a technician that you think every coach on your staff should master.
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back probably early in my career, and I'll use kind of a line here. I remember I took martial arts. I'd finished football, played football at Georgia, finished in 1992, started coaching at Colorado in 94 and took martial arts. My karate instructor, his name was Dr. Jim Tyndall. He would always say this line to me. He's like, look, you really need to study one martial art and be really good at that one. But you can take other things at some point. Because he used to always say this to me, Coach. He'd say, you don't want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. And so I kind of took that to heart as early on in my coaching career and just delved into the Olympic lifts. And this is back when I was with Doc Crease at Colorado back in 94, 95, 96. And man, I just kind of like nerded out and we started having some of the Olympic summer games there in U.S. weightlifting. So we'd have a lot of our top U.S. lifters come in and train right there in our weight room. And I got to talk to their coaches, look at the different techniques. And it was, it's fascinating to see how every coach did things a little differently depending on the snatch or the clean, the jerk. I mean, I learned a lot, and probably I learned more that summer and those couple years of what I was doing wrong. But also I learned that every athlete has to be coached a little differently. And that was kind of my first taste of really getting so I feel like I can teach Olympic lifts in the dark. Then when I got to Texas, Angel Spazov was here. He was the Bulgarian national coach. He taught me, so I always learned to teach Olympic lifts from bottom up. Well, he teaches from top down. And so after I've been around him and our US coach, so he taught differently than US coaches. So I think as a technician, you need to find one niche that, man, that's your specialty, that's your superpower, and you can do better than most everybody else. So I think that's so important to be, don't be a jack of all trades, be a
I
master of
couldn't agree with you more on that. I think I always say, don't be an inch deep and a mile wide,
right.
right? You want to go deep on something, and that's how you kind of differentiate yourself in the space a little bit too, by being kind of niche down and being an expert in a certain area. It doesn't mean that you don't know those other areas. It just means that when there's a go-to problem, you're the person to come to, and that's how you kind of separate yourself in a crowded marketplace. But what about the manager piece? What's one hard lesson that you've learned managing people in 25 plus career years?
I think hiring for me is to me, this is just my opinion. Hiring and firing are the two hardest things to do. Hiring is very difficult, especially the more people you have to vet information through and the different opinions that you got to try. Right. Everybody's got an expectation. Everybody's got an opinion or perspective about who would be the best. But here's the deal. When you hire somebody, right, once they hit the ground, they're under your care. And so it's this like unique blend. That's why it's such an art of listening to people, getting information, interviewing people to enough depth that you'll never find the perfect hire. I think that's impossible, but I think at the end of the day, you can find somebody who's going to, that's why I love that it's kind of cliche, but you hire for attitude and you train for skill. I've tried to hire people really skilled, but maybe they don't have the humbleness or the flexibility to try to learn to change the way they do stuff. And so I think when you look for great attitudes in people and then you try to bring them in and mentor them over time, I think that's where for me is a sweet spot. So I think just hiring and firing. So hiring too fast, I would say would be a mistake. Not doing your homework and kind of, what's that, like hire slow but fire fast. That's another one I think so important. And then the second bookend of that is just like not letting somebody go when you should. It's painful for them. It's even more painful for you and other people working with them when you just keep putting that off. And it hurts. It's the worst thing to do. I can't stand it. But I think just hiring the right people and then making those tough decisions to pull the tooth, so to speak, when somebody needs to move on.
Such an important skill. We'll dig into that a little bit more because that's where I want to focus this episode. But when you take the time to learn how to hire correctly, then that makes those times less that you have to do the hard work of letting somebody go. But you're right, on the back end, sometimes that's the best thing for both you and the organization and that coach, so that they can go and grow and continue to develop as a coach. Last one here, just entrepreneurial mindset. You and I have shared this throughout our career, but just what's one entrepreneurial skill that you think every strength coach needs to have?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things to this question. I think number one, you have got, and this comes from, and I'm in my office right now, but I've got a book over here. Have you ever heard of Dory Clark? Anyway, she's got a book called Entrepreneurial You. And I believe this is a correct model for today. So old days back when my dad was working, he was an insurance salesman, man. My stepdad was, he worked for TVA power plant in Tennessee Valley Authority in Nashville, in Gallatin. Back then, right, the model was you work one job, you stay faithful for 30 plus years, right? My father-in-law was like, he worked for the USPS, United States Postal Service, for 30 plus years. You get the gold watch, you get the plaque, you have the going away party, retirement party, and you're done. And back then they were like, you're crazy to do anything else. You just worked one job. Well, today, Dory talks about how you really need multiple streams of income. And so I think a coach for today has got to find ways to create money while they're sleeping, right? How do you leverage your current role, position, talent, skills, network connections, your vision and dreams into what you're currently doing? So I like what she says. You need to have about 5 to 7 streams of income. You're crazy not to have backup plans. And maybe I look at our destiny and purpose, right? If you go on a big trip, some roads, there's one bridge to get across to the other side, but sometimes you got 4 or 5 lanes, you can switch lanes. And I think that's how our careers are sometimes. There's going to be seasons where you got to be in that one lane for a little bit, but then when it opens back up, you got 3, 4, 5 lanes you can kind of run in. And I just think entrepreneurial, like you're really kind of, again, foolish, I feel like, if you just put all your eggs in one basket and not have some other lanes, streams of income you can run in and create revenue.
As you know, I mean, I've hung my hat on this almost my career in terms of just the importance of this, but to me, like, I want to be $1 million strength coach, but I don't want to have $1 million come from one single source. I want to have 10, $100,000
Hmm.
sources, and finding different things. And I think, to elaborate a little bit on that, I think as a coach, developing those skills for those other lanes, even though, maybe that's not where your focus is at, and your focus is on being a great strength coach and have your feet where you're at. But developing those skills are going to make you a better coach, but it also opens up those other lanes. And that's kind of that toll booth that allows you to take some of those throughout. But as I said, you're here really, because I just think you're one of the best managers. Let's dig in a little bit to just that piece. And so, what are some of the non-negotiables in your staff culture at Texas?
Yeah, I mean, I know this is maybe a little cliche, but I just think character is so huge. And what I mean by character is, Os Guinness defines character like this: who you are when no one is watching, and so you got to get people that when they come in and you see them at the job, that's great, but they're good at their job. But when they leave, like, what are they doing? Are they acting a fool? Are they and partying? Are they doing something that's shady? I mean, I think to me, Ed Cole said this, right? Faithfulness, right? Faithfulness is the cornerstone of character. And so I'm looking for staff that they're faithful at their job, they're faithful to grow and learn, but they're also faithful when they walk out the door of the weight room and they're on the road traveling or away from the office. They're going to be faithful to our staff, to our athletes, and to our university. So I think I look for character kind of as the bedrock of that. And then after that, I think you've got to find people that, to me, it's like the greatest coaches know that your soft skills are the greatest skills. So they got to be really good with people. That's one of my favorite kind of leadership axioms is on talking about flexibility and having people skills is like, blessed are the flexible, for they will not be bent out of shape. So you gotta have people that are flexible, adaptable, that can work with the AD, they can work with the trainer, they can work with the head coach that's demanding, they can work with our sports scientists. They can work with our academic people. If they need to work with the people on the field that do all the upkeep and all that, they can do it all. And if you just got a coach that all they know is do how to coach and motivate and train athletes, their arms gonna be tied, especially these big schools, these big universities. You're gonna have to have some flexibility. So I think having some flexibility, some people skills is huge. And then I think lastly, I would say, coach, you need somebody who always is just they're constantly curious, right? They want to grow, they want to learn. One of my favorite quotes on this is, and I'm blanking on the guy's name, but work harder on yourself than you do your job. Somebody who's constantly like sharp, and it doesn't even have to be strength and conditioning. It could be, I think sometimes taking classes and learning stuff outside of what we actually do in the weight room makes us better coaches. And so I think those are the things I look for in people when we're looking for a good staff.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's really what makes the difference when you're working with people and you're managing people being the hardest part to manage, not, time, resources, kind of being the other things. You got to have those people that can adapt and that can go along to get along, so, but also, challenge and make everybody better around them. And that foundation of character, I couldn't agree with you more. When you're looking for that, let's say, that you obviously intern programs and GA programs and trying to hire from within, and that helps eliminate some of that, ambiguity. But when you have to go outside and you're looking for that, obviously people can scrub their social media. People, employers often try to paint them in the most positive light. What are some of the key questions, or what are the deductive things that you're doing to try to get to the core and find out about somebody's character or their curiosity or, their
Yeah.
flexibility?
I mean, I think a practical thing is to listen to somebody talk when you ask them questions. Do they talk more about themselves? Do they have a sense of an overflated view of their importance? And it all comes out in the type of words they use and how they phrase different answers. I think too, if somebody talks too much and they don't it's more of a monologue, not a dialogue, that's always kind of a flag to me that they can't. And here's another one too, coach. If somebody just talks and talks and they don't when I talk to them, I can tell if they're listening or not. I go, "Wow, that person really doesn't listen," and they talk really long and they don't know when to pause. I'm like, "Man, this is a flag to me." It's not they're a bad person, but that kind of person in these settings, they're gonna piss a lot of people off. And I always tell people, you got a spiritual gift of pissing people off, man. Like, we gotta get this fixed. So I think just again, it comes back to when you really drill down to people, you can tell because you need to work on being more interested than interesting. And I think you can pick up on that pretty quick in a conversation. It doesn't take but 15, 20 minutes, some maybe a little longer sometimes, but just casual conversation.
So when you get those people on campus, for the first week, the first month, even the first year, what are some of the onboarding things that you're doing to create that alignment and reinforce those core values?
I like to just I think this is kind of Tim Elmore's got a book. It's kind of a PDF book. It's a digital book, but it's called The Glass is Still Half Full. And it's all about all the generation, these young generation. So I'm getting older now, so I'm starting to work with younger staff, which I absolutely love. The one thing they crave, coach, they want FaceTime. They want time with their manager. And I think just casual check-ins. Hey, let's get together this week. Let's see how it's going. Like, hey, how's this going with this coach? How's this team? How's your family doing? And sometimes even bringing them alongside you to work kind of side by side you sometimes just to build that rapport. So I think early on, just seek to build more contact points with people. It can be casual, it can be formal, whatever works best for you. Bringing them along, I think, again, just bring them alongside you so you can kind of watch them a little bit and give them some feedback. I think the other thing I do is I try to recommend books for some of our younger staff when they come on. And today you can get so much on like Audible. You don't even have to give them like, hey, go listen to these books on leadership. And I think that helps me. But just more contact points, face to face time.
Yeah. What systems and rhythms kind of do you have in place to, you mentioned obviously the FaceTime and the check-ins, but I mean, do you have any sort of formal kind of evaluation process? Is there any sort of kind of check-in with programs and being reviewed or, those types of things that are going to kind of put up some guardrails for them to not get too far off course?
Yeah, I think I don't think you sound the alarm on this, what I'm gonna say, but I think you do a little mini 360 review on each person. Okay, that person's working with the trainer, the assistant coach, the head coach, the equipment manager. Just call those people, have short conversations. Hey, how's it been working with so and so? How's he doing from your perspective and your lens? How are they doing? Is there anything you could share with me that I could help them work on as they continue to kind of do a good job here? Because I want to see them be successful. And you'd be shocked if you call people and it's not a written evaluation, how you can just get some candid feedback that's really helpful just by doing that. But again, I think you got to have some of the rapport with some of those people that they trust that you're going to use that information, not to
Sure.
throw them under the bus, but to use that to try to help this employee be successful. And I think that's what works for me is FaceTime with them and then just doing a little mini kind of casual 360. There's not really you can do that. I would recommend, maybe after the first like 30 to 60 days they've been on your staff, then after that, then maybe do it like per quarter or something or per semester. Not you don't have to do it. If they're doing great, you don't even have to be that frequent. And some of it can be really casual if you're around the people more. You don't even have to you can just say, "Hey, how's so and so doing?"
I think it's so important too, what you're saying. One thing that I've noticed when I've done that in the past, not to cut you off there, is coaches will once you initiate that and you create that kind of rapport with those support staff and ancillary, individuals that they work with, oftentimes they'll seek you out and
Mhm.
to say good things, to give you some good, ammunition to use in a positive way with your staff and lift them up throughout that time, which I think is fantastic as well.
Yeah, and the good thing too, what you're saying, as you do that, your perception will change of how people view you. That you run a good shop, that you care about, and then that trickles up to your supervisors too as you kind of do that. So it just shows your due diligence.
So how have you handled it then in the past when, the performance hasn't been good or the expectations aren't being met? How do you address that without kind of damaging morale, both with that individual, but also with the people around them?
Yeah, I mean, to be candid, like I still to this day am so uncomfortable with that. I hate it. Early on in my career, when I was a young director here, I would just run from it and avoid it. Just hope, try to talk to them, hope it's going to get better, but then nothing gets better. Right. And so the only way I know how to do it is you gotta meet this like head on. You've got to sit people down. You've got to have the hard conversations. I would even say the conversations are hard, but what's harder is the work you got to do to have those conversations. Let's say it's not going good. You know this is going in a bad direction. You're hoping it's going to end well. It's probably not going to end well. Well, it's talking to HR, talking to your boss, talking to the people that it's going to impact the most about where it's headed, what's going on, and so that when it does happen, nobody is like shell shocked, right? So I think that's the most stressful part's the lead up to it. Once you actually make the decision, there's like a huge relief if you have to let somebody go for everybody because now you can actually move forward. But I've done it both. I've tried to avoid it. I've tried that method. That doesn't work. It gets worse. I've tried to change everything I can, coach them up, get them mentoring, meet with the people that were upset, come in and assist and kind of come alongside and try to help them do stuff. Got worse. I've done every trick in the book. At the end of the day, you've got to set expectations with this staff member. You got to check in with them, get feedback. If they're screwing up, if they're not doing good, you've got to early on give them feedback on what they're doing wrong and coach them up on how to do better. And if you can't coach them up, provide resources to help them get better. If that doesn't work, you got to start documentation because at some point, there's two things here, right? With a weak link, you can either train them or you can trade them. That's all you can do. If they're not getting the training or they're not responding to the coaching, whether they're being stubborn or just not getting it, it's just a bad fit. At some point, you got to trade them.
Yeah.
If you'll do it right, it's never fun, but if you do it right and you take more initiative and more proactive, it will be much easier to handle than if you run from it or just try to avoid it. It'll be a much bigger mess if you don't.
Couldn't agree with you more. You mentioned that, we're on the other side of this bell-shaped curve in our career, right? And we've been doing this for a long time. It's not too long ago when we were the young ones in the field, kind of on the upward slope. But what have you noticed without sounding like a crotchety old man, right? Like, what have you noticed about managing these young coaches coming out now, both in a positive in a way and then ways that you've had to adapt your management style to make them the most effective coaches they can be?
Yeah, simple for me, I think what I love about this generation, very smart, dude. They know their stuff. Like they got the content, they know so they have a lot of the competencies that we're looking for knowledge-wise. So I like that. They're usually like very creative because they got so many resources to pull from and different people to be back when we first started, you had to like read all the books, take a 3-hour trip across town and spend a couple days with somebody to learn. Now you can sign up for a weekly podcast or take an online class and never meet the person. So I think that today they're very, have a great content. They're smart, very creative. What I think what's kind of changing is I don't know that I'm seeing like you and I we grew up, man. You would grind, right? I'd get here at 5 in the morning. We'd get home at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. Next day, rinse and repeat. I don't know that. I think the field is changing. Now, I'm not. There's still people out there that will do that, but I think people are getting more like, hey, I want to have a life outside of here, and so I'm having to do a better job of if somebody doesn't want to be up here all day, hey, go home, go see your girlfriend, take that trip, find a new hobby. And so I think as you do that, people actually like working for you and it makes them a better coach once you kind of get them in here. They actually enjoy doing the job because burnout in this industry right now is astronomical. It's close to 60%.
Yeah.
And people are leaving. I mean, we're even seeing it like now, not just in strength, but in other departments. Pay's not great, right? Hours are crazy and the demands are all over the place with this revenue sharing stuff. Well, I think the more that you can bring more, not just, I don't think it's life work balance, but I just think do a great job, but then have a life, right? Find something else that kind of keeps you, having a good time here, whether it's in Austin or wherever. So I think that's been the biggest thing for me. I'm seeing just a change in the grind. You're not seeing the grinders as much anymore.
Yeah, I think I've noticed, kind of, I think just the world in general, not just this generation, but I think the world in general has just become more transactional in nature, and what you said, I mean, all the things that you listed about the positive skills that you're looking for, the ones that become coaches that last in this profession, those soft skills that you mentioned, those are developed in those in between hours. Those are developed in those, those one-off talks with the athlete in between groups, and you have to be around to be able to do that, and I think, yeah, that's unfortunately, I think I always say that it's a huge privilege to do what we do, because we do have this, the opportunity to make this kind of impact in the people that we work with. We have to, but the only way to do that, I've said this in several times, but I had a pastor that would always say that you spell love Time, right?
You do.
You have to
Yeah.
spend time on what you love. And if you say that you want to help those athletes and have that kind of impact, then you got to spend the time as well. That is a challenge. That's a challenge that I've faced as well, and I agree and echo. You do have to be conscious of the fact that this profession, the burnout, the stress, and all the things that go with it is high, and you have to create space for them to be able to have a life outside of this. It's a tough task, but it's there. What have you done? This is something I always fought with the staffs that I've managed, to where you're with these people for 14 hours a day for 7 days a week for months on end at some points. And then, you're trying to create these opportunities to interact outside of the weight room. But like the last thing sometimes you want to do is go bowling when you just were spent 14 hours with them, or do something along those lines. What are some creative ways that you've created some organic staff interactions outside of the weight room?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we really do. I think the easy on-ramp for this for me has always been January. We always do strategic planning. And when I first started doing that, I'd create this long agenda all day long. It was terrible, coach. I mean, the staff didn't like it. I could tell. So I think what I think the sweet spot has been try to get us. I think the key is find space that's not normal. We've done it out of the golf course. Let's see, we've done it over here in the stadium in one of these sky boxes. So it can't be in the office, because I've tried that. People get on their phones and they check email. So find you a space once a year where it's offsite, have some kind of a theme. And I've done this. I kind of bring the agenda. I've done everything from doing like a 30-40 minute teaching on leadership. I've had guest speakers. I've done resume building sessions. I've done branding and marketing stuff for our staff. What else? So we'll spend some time on a topic. We'll have a speaker. Then we'll do like a SWOT analysis or strategic plan for our department. And then we'll have fun, whether it's play golf, have lunch catered or something, go to the lake. So I think you kind of mix some of that, reflect on the year, have some inspiration, and then just have some fun. So I think that helps kind of ease kind of, it doesn't feel as much. It's still work, but it doesn't feel as heavy, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree that offside, it's what's that? Is that Lencioni with the strategic offsite, the weekly tactical and the monthly strategic. I couldn't agree more. Getting them away, still within work hours. I think that's kind of the trick.
Yeah, you got to do that. Yeah.
You can get it within work hours to where it doesn't feel like they're doing something additional, taken away from family when they've already given so much. I think that that's a big piece. And then blending that with some sort of experience that's memorable, kind of like what you do with your kids, right? Where you don't have a whole lot of time with them, but when you do, you want to make sure that's memorable. And so I think that's a great point. All right, man. We finished the show here with some quick hits. Who's one coach that really sharpened you the most, that made a huge impact on you?
But yeah, I mean, my whole career, one of the coaches that come to mind, Dan Path, for sure. I mean, Dan still lives here in Texas, works for Altus now, does a lot of private stuff, but I still I worked with Dan early 2000s. It was like his little shadow, but he sharpened me, gave me books to read, would bring me alongside, talk to me about training, therapy, injuries, motivation, mindset, you name it. I mean, Dan was he's like Master Yoda, but yeah, he had a big impact on me.
What's one habit or practice that's really kind of helped keep you grounded in this profession?
Easy, I think and this is all cliche, everybody's doing books on it, but just I have to have morning quiet time. For me personally, it's my routine. I make coffee the night before I'm up. I get coffee. And right now at my age and career, I want some stillness. I want quietness. one small light on, some coffee. Sometimes I just sit there and think and reflect. A lot of times I'll pray. I'll read scripture, read my Bible, or I got a good book I'm reading. But for me, just kind of a reset of my mind. Going to bed early enough so I can get up, that really sets me up for an amazing day usually. If I don't do that, just something feels off. So I think, and again, I know that's not doable for everybody, but just being able to get up. When I first started doing that, it was back in like 95, 96. I'd get up 5 minutes early. Today I'm up, I can get up at 45 minutes, an hour early. It's just such a habit for me. But I would say start small if you've never done that. Start 5 or 10 minutes and just start building that routine, and it makes a big difference.
For sure. What's I've always asked this question in every podcast I've done is just what's one of the biggest mistakes that you've made in the profession and how you learned from it?
I mean, just not being an advocate for myself. I still struggle with it. Um, nobody's going to fight for you better than you will. When I say fight for yourself, there's a right, wrong way to do that. Barging in the door, wanting to raise, that's going to make people mad again. But learning how to, you know, articulate your value and worth, not only articulate it, but make sure you've done that legitimately first before you actually go in and ask for the raise, ask for the promotion, ask for the extra work or whatever, but also be compensated. Just don't be the rug for everybody just to walk on, So, but don't be afraid to ask and advocate for yourself because nobody else is going to. They're not.
Question. This might be the hardest question for you. Probably the easiest question I ask for most people, but the hardest for you is give me one book or resource that you think that every strength coach should read.
Probably, I love leadership. I think one of I kind of been referenced this one a lot lately. You ever heard of Donald T. Phillips? So he's got a book called Lincoln on Leadership. That book is packed with nuggets on leading a team, having tough conversations, making replacements, being strategic. I mean, it's just he's a phenomenal author. It's a kind of an older book, but short read, 200 pages, but will be super impactful.
That actually gives me another question for you really quick. Cause you and I share that passion of which I didn't have when I was a youth. I did not read a book until I was probably a sophomore in high school. But now I read quite a bit. What do you do with all the old books that you
For
have?
me, I do a purge about every couple years, books I feel like I don't need anymore, but I keep most of them. My wife thinks I'm a crack addict. Because I speak a lot too. So if I'm doing a speech, I'll go pull up 3 or 4 books or more sometimes. I have books everywhere sometimes. Because I write in all my books and take notes.
Yeah, me
Well, I
too.
can like literally flip through them and find out nuggets. Because I don't know, almost got like a photographic memory on where stuff is at. It's weird. I don't know. It's a weird kind of thing I have. But I keep most of them. But then every couple years, when my wife goes, "This is getting ridiculous. I have to purge." Then what I do, I sell that money and I go get more books.
There you go. You know what I've done actually lately is I've made it a point to send that book to somebody that I think would help. It would help, and that's
Yep,
been
yeah, I've done some of that.
yeah.
I've been doing Audible lately, so I've made some changes.
Yeah. Well, what I want to do more of is, yeah, but I'm with you, is I want to switch to more digital. So that way those notes are I can pull those notes out really quick
Yeah, yeah.
that I write and those highlights. But
I retain more when I write,
you and me
so
both. Yeah. You and me both. Well, man, we could talk all day. And I know, again, just a great friend and great resource to me through the years. And just really always appreciate the way that you lead. The
thank you,
people
coach.
around you, and this has been gold. This whole thing. I know you got a million different things going on. Where can most people stay up with you? And then just really quickly plug, your latest book and some of the things you got going on.
Yeah, thanks, coach. At Donnie Maib, just go to Instagram. You can DM me there. That's probably easiest. I stay pretty active on Instagram. And then, yeah, I wrote 2 books thanks to you. You inspired me for sure. That the first one came out, I think, in 23. It's called The Secret Sauce of Leadership. And then the one that came out last year recently was The 2 Buckets of Leadership. And they're kind of like bookends. One's about self-leadership, one's about leading a team or department. And you can find them both on Amazon.
Yeah, both great books. And I think you originally started as one whole book and you separated one. Then yeah, I can remember. Yeah. It's awesome, man. Well, brother, appreciate you. Thanks so much. And just you're all
Thank you. Thank you, Coach Mac. So good to chat. All right.
thanks, buddy.
All right.